Defending Utah covers the stories others are just too often afraid to touch.
They don't nibble around the edges when it comes to pointing out threats to our liberty. They're not afraid to name names and call out organizations.
This is Defending Utah Radio, every Friday morning at 9 on K-Talk 1640. Defending Utah. Think right and wrong, not right and left. Join Defending Utah, because if you're not already on a government watch list, you should be.
Yeah, this is Kevin Paulson standing in for Ben McClintock. We've got GW Sage here.
As we get into this discussion with Ann, we hope and anticipate that any of you that may have some questions, perhaps you have family members that you'd like to call in and ask some questions about, we would invite all of you listeners to certainly call in here to K-Talk Media at 801-253-4883.
Ann, are you on now?
I am.
Hey, we got you. Okay, hey, sorry about that. I had the phone on mute. So I'm a novice at running the system here. So anyway, it's a real pleasure to have you on. And GW is with me. This is Kevin and GW. Of course, you know Ben is out, but we're really happy to have you. And he did a little introduction for you about your experience with psychotropic drugs and how they work and what is going on in today's culture. And maybe you could introduce yourself just briefly.
Okay, I don't want to repeat what he might have said, but I've just spent 30 years doing this now. I've been testifying in cases involving the drugs since 1992. So I guess you can say I've pretty much immersed myself in the whole issue for a very long time.
Yeah, I know GW has a book, and at least his wife. What were you saying, GW, about the book that Ann?
Yeah, I mean, it's really your go-to book, right? It's Prozac, Panacea, or Pandora, and that was published, correct me if I'm wrong, Ann, but about 30 years ago. Still super relevant. Nobody's really been able to show anything other than the accuracy of your work. And through that, really looking for other methods, right? Which perhaps could be a couple things maybe we could jump into, Ann, this morning with you is, number one, what really took you down the path of looking deeper into all of these different, pharmaceuticals and their ill effects?
Well, I was living in West Jordan at the time, and I had two good friends, both of them LDS members, good, strong LDS members. One had just returned from a mission. The other, I had been her escort through the temple. So, and suddenly, they both started drinking, which was very much out of character for them. But the one thing that they had in common was a prescription for Prozac. And both of them began asking questions. The one, who was one of my neighbors, ended up in a psych ward because she was mixing the alcohol with her Prozac. And I had called and spoken to a nurse who said, yes, the mixture of the two could easily cause psychosis. But anyway, as they kept asking me questions, I finally heard the real fear in their voice and thought, I really do need to look into this for them. So I stopped by a local pharmacy and got just, a package insert for Prozac. And there it was, loud and clear. And I had always known that the cravings for alcohol came from hypoglycemia. Alcoholism is hypoglycemia. If you read the works of Dr. James Milam, he makes that very clear. And he's the one who wrote the go-to book for alcoholism called Under the Influence. His clinic had almost zero recidivism because he would put them on a good hypoglycemic diet and their cravings for the alcohol would go away. So there it was in black and white that Prozac causes hypoglycemia and diabetes, that they had reports of those things. So I understood immediately what was happening to them and began shouting that alarm on K-Talk and KSL and everywhere else that I was doing interviews. And people started reporting it like crazy. Those who had overcome alcoholism for like 15 years were given one of these drugs, and suddenly they were off the wagon.
Well, we've got to go to break.
For alcohol.
We'll be right back in a few minutes.
Tired of bureaucrats and tyrannical government? Defending Utah knows how to fix that. It's called nullification. To find out more, stop by our office and pick up your pamphlet on nullification today. DefendingUtah.org. Think right and wrong, not right and left.
This Defending Utah presentation brought to you in part by Anderson Accounting, andersonaccounting.com, Trust Plumbing, 801-808-5470, Higher Calling Firearms, highercallingfirearms.com, Pioneer Family Scholars, Black Lotus Web Dev, blacklotuswebdev.com, American Appliance at 801-254-2566, Shem Financial Services, 801-856-6151, and the law offices of Garrett T. Smith, 801-477-1570, and Kangen Water at championsneverquit.biz.
It's a fact. More photos of you are being taken than ever before. Are you ashamed of your smile? At last, a new technology that gives a brighter and healthier smile in under 2 hours. And it's fully warranted, so you'll never have to worry about your smile again. Call Dr. Jeremy Thompson at Thompson Dental, 801-254-0835, or visit GoNewSmile.com, and we'll show you how you can restore your faded, yellowed, or worn teeth without surgery, crowns, or implants. And it's backed by a 30-day, 100% satisfaction money-back guarantee. This scientific breakthrough will painlessly transform your appearance in one visit. The smile you've been waiting for will never cost less or look brighter than it will today. Call 801-254-0835 or visit GoNewSmile.com. That's GONU smile.com to revitalize your smile. New smile. It looks good on you.
Okay, we are back with Ann, and we're talking about psychotropic drugs and the effects and the why and the who and the how.
Yeah, and so Dr. Tracy had just given us a little insight into some very close friends of hers, some neighbors here in Utah, out in West Jordan, that had experienced some negative side effects, to say the very least, of taking some of these drugs, specifically Prozac. And if you're still with us, maybe pick up on that and exactly what rabbit hole that led you down.
Well, I became more and more concerned. I had called trying to find a woman whose husband had committed suicide on Prozac, even though he was being monitored nonstop. He was able to commit suicide. And I had lost track of her and needed to get hold of her and called her bishop. And as I mentioned to the bishop why I was trying to find her and what I was doing, he said, "Oh, my gosh, I've got a young returned missionary in my ward, a female, who is drinking like crazy. She has 2 small children, and her poor husband is having to stay home from work to take care of the children while she drinks." And he said, "We have tried everything," but he said, "She is on Prozac. Do you think you could help?" And I said, "Yeah, I do." And so I worked with her and helped her as she weaned off of the drug. And sure enough, all of her cravings for alcohol disappeared. And she said to me, she said, I don't even know how I knew it was alcohol I was craving, because I've never tasted it in my life. And I thought, if you can take people like that and turn them into that kind of an alcoholic almost overnight with these drugs, somebody's got to do something about that.
Well, and maybe...
that's a terrible disease.
Well, and I know for all of our listeners out there, as they're studying Defending Utah and looking at understanding the difference between right and wrong, I think sometimes we lose ourselves a little bit in the idea that because Prozac is prescribed by a medical doctor, that it must be okay, that there's nothing wrong with it. But could you speak briefly about the level of Prozac usage and other antipsychotics and antidepressants, specifically here in the state of Utah?
Where I was headed next.
Great minds think alike here.
I immediately saw that they were just flooding the entire area with these drugs. And I thought, what is going on here? And I even contacted a news crew out of San Francisco. The reporter's sister had committed suicide on Prozac, and she also had those alcohol cravings. So she was very, very interested in what I was seeing, and I told her I just couldn't believe the way the entire area was being flooded with the drugs. I said, somebody needs to talk about what's going on here, because I had just done an interview with Salt Lake City magazine, and the reporter had tried and tried and tried to get some idea of how many prescriptions were being filled in the valley. She couldn't find anything. Nobody would talk. So she finally was able to go into a section where she found how many state employees were taking antidepressants. That was 92. And she found 60% were on antidepressants at that point.
Dr. Tracy.
And she was blown away.
Yeah, so phenomenal stuff. So how do these drugs even work? What do they do?
Okay, then that's it. What they do, and everybody's heard about serotonin now, they go into the system and block your ability to metabolize serotonin. Serotonin is a neurotransmitter, but what they're not telling you is that LSD and PCP increase serotonin, but they do it very rapidly instead of gradually like the antidepressants do. And it is by increasing serotonin that they produce hallucinations. And so I'm going, wait a minute. So as these antidepressants gradually increase serotonin, we're going to get LSD and PCP-like effects. I even ran into a kid in an office up near Ogden one day, and I had a button on that said, just say no to Prozac, because I'd already gone to the FDA and testified in the first hearing that they had on it, and picked one up there. Anyway, he looked at me and he said, just say no to Prozac. Why? I'm on it. So I gave him just a brief overview, and he started pulling out these huge medical books out of his backpack. And he said, I thought, what? 16-year-old kid. He said, I've been reading these. And I said, you have? He said, well, my IQ was 160 when I started, but it's down about 30 points since I started using Prozac. And he said, according to these books, if I stay on this drug, I'm going to go psychotic. And I said, well, you're right. That's exactly what increasing serotonin does cause. You're reading it right. And for years I thought a 16-year-old kid can figure it out, but all these doctors have been totally snowed with this lie about serotonin. It's amazing.
Well, that's the interesting thing. When you go to medical school, my understanding is you're not really rewarded for thinking for yourself.
Right.
It's like...
Well, who owns all those medical schools? Who's funding all of it? You know, if people knew, they'd know it was pharma. And what's really sad is that they got away with it in a state that was probably the most religious state in the country. Well, and yet we were warned in Revelations by John that this would happen, that there would be this huge deception about prescription drugs that would flood the planet and deceive everyone, and prophets, saints, and all good men would die as a result.
Well,
scary, huh?
Oh, way scary. And as we are waking up to this, literally and physically, we hope, as we're getting ready to step into another break here with Dr. Tracy, perhaps you could be thinking about all of these stories and instances where individuals have needed to come out of their use of these particular psychotropic drugs. And what is the other solution? You know, because I can imagine a number of our listeners are currently hearing this and saying, oh my gosh, you are describing the nightmare that I am living. But what else can I do? I know that if I quit cold turkey, that everything's going to amplify. So perhaps we can give our...
you don't do that.
Perfect. Yes. Thank you so much, Dr. Tracy. And so as a brief lead-in for that, what are some of the solutions that we can prepare for and educate our listeners on this morning?
All right. We can go into that. But people do need to know, and this is what I have warned of from the minute we got a website up. Streaming across the top of the site for years has been, do not abruptly change your dose of an antidepressant. It must be extremely gradual in order for you to make it off safely. And they have finally just put out something this last month from the Royal Psychiatric something or other.
Now, it's on
our website at drugawareness.org if anybody wants to go read all of it.
Yeah,
but
I was just going to...
They have admitted that it's very severe. The withdrawal they thought was mild is very severe.
Yeah, we neglected to plug that for you earlier, Dr. Tracy, but she's actually the executive director of the International Coalition for Drug Awareness, and some amazing resources out there for any of our listeners, as well as others that may want to and feel like educating themselves further than what we can obviously get across in our hour together this morning.
Right. And one thing that people need to know is that, you know, I was pretty upset at these people that put all this together when I figured out what was going on. And I thought, how can they do that to a fellow human being? And I was reminded that there has to be good people among them. And I thought, yeah, right. I didn't want to hear that.
Yeah.
I ended up being very good friends with Dr. Candace Pert, whose work was used to make these drugs possible. And she joined me in 1997 after she came out publicly against the drug, calling them monsters that she wished she had never had anything to do with their birth and development.
So this is sounding...
And she encouraged people to turn to diet and exercise. I wonder where we've heard that before.
Wow, yeah, and this is sounding more and more like the issues that surrounded the Roe v. Wade case, where initially we have individuals being purported as being very pro-abortion, only to later come out and say, I was used incorrectly and my information and name was used incorrectly. It sounds like that is really the pseudoscience that is behind these particular drugs and the errors within them where, again, exercise, to your point, is medicine.
Yeah. Well, and people don't know the difference between a drug and medicine. There is none. Nearly every last street drug we have out there started out as a safe and effective prescription medication.
Well,
now we call them drugs because they're illegal. Because we woke up to them.
With how many studies they have to do to certify a drug, how in the world do these effects get through?
George Bush Sr. changed that in order to get Prozac on the market. He had headed the company who put it out. He also headed the CIA, who was looking for the perfect mind control drug. And the combination seemed to fit quite well for them.
Well, and now the conspiracy theory alarmists are going to be, oh, what in the world is she talking about? Mind control. So when you get questions like that, well, you're just a conspiracy theorist. What do you say?
I've testified in cases for far too long to not know that I need to have just line upon line showing exactly what happened. And I've got that. And it leads right back. I mean, what most people don't know, that we brought 1,600 Nazi scientists to America after World War II. I was floored. That was called Operation Paperclip.
Paperclip, that's right.
And George Bush Sr. was behind it. And so LSD was their drug of choice for mind control. So much so that they took 80% of their initial budget to go buy up all the LSD that they could find. Well, they found out that most everyone was growing up from ergot fungus, and that just didn't provide them with the amount that they needed. So they went to Eli Lilly, the makers of Prozac, and said, look, this is our dilemma. Can you come up with a synthetic version of LSD for us? And they offered to deliver it by the truckload. Well, they ran into trouble in 1968 when Congress banned LSD. And reporters went to the CIA and they said, what are you going to do now that you don't have LSD to use for your mind control project? You know what they said, word for word? We'll look to the pharmaceutical company to see what they come up with in the way of a drug used for psychoanalysis that we can use for mind control. That was in October of 1968. You know what I found out just this last year when I came to Arizona to help settle my parents' estate? My brother had been on a mission back in Indiana, where Eli Lilly is based, in 1969, and had a lengthy conversation with someone who was working for Eli Lilly there in Indianapolis. And the man was going on and on and on about this great new drug they were developing that was going to rid the world of depression. So 1 year later, they already had Prozac on the drawing board.
Well, and that really brings to mind one of my favorite John Adams quote, where he said, facts are stubborn things, and whatever may be our wishes, our inclinations, or the dictates of our passions, they cannot alter the state of facts and evidence. And I think as you've been discussing that quote jumped into my mind, because it's just so very clear that this is no longer a theory. Put conspiracy, put anything in front of that word that you desire. These are the facts. And I think as we as a populace begin to wake up to these facts and understand right versus wrong, which is, again, the huge tagline here at Defending Utah, that we come away much more empowered than simply accepting the norm and accepting these solutions that are incorrect. And I'm
Right.
And to me, it's strange.
And I've been in shock. With as much as I know, I was in shock to find all this out. A friend who worked very closely with vets suffering from Gulf War syndrome, many of your listeners may know her, Captain Joyce Riley. She had me come down for a press conference in about 96 in Southern California. And while there, she showed me a list of 17 requirements the CIA had for a perfect mind control drug. And I remember just going into shock. So I forgot to ask for all the information that I needed to keep that on hand. But anyway, as I read through them,
we've got to go to a hard break
I realized Prozac fits 16 of those 17 points to a T.
That's incredible stuff. We are with Dr. Anna Blake Tracey, and we'll be back shortly regarding psychotropic drugs and all the negative ills of it.
This Defending Utah presentation brought to you in part by Anderson Accounting, andersonaccounting.com, Trust Plumbing, 801-808-5470, Higher Calling Firearms, highercallingfirearms.com, Pioneer Family Scholars, Black Lotus Web Dev, blacklotuswebdev.com, American Appliance at 801-254-2566, Shem Financial Services, 801-856-6151, and the law offices of Garrett T. Smith, 801-477-1570, and Kangen Water at championsneverquit.biz.
It's a fact. More photos of you are being taken than ever before. Are you ashamed of your smile? At last, a new technology that gives a brighter and healthier smile in under 2 hours. And it's fully warranted, so you'll never have to worry about your smile again. Call Dr. Jeremy Thompson at Thompson Dental, 801-254-0835, or visit gonewsmile.com, and we'll show you how you can restore your faded, yellowed, or worn teeth without surgery, crowns, or implants. And it's backed by a 30-day, 100% satisfaction money-back guarantee. This scientific breakthrough will painlessly transform your appearance in one visit. The smile you've been waiting for will never cost less or look brighter than it will today. Call 801-254-0835 or visit gonewsmile.com. That's GONU smile.com to revitalize your smile. New Smile. It looks good on you.
And we are back with Dr. Anna Blake Tracey. This is Kevin Paulson standing in for Ben McClintock. We've got GW Sage here, and we are chatting with Dr. Tracey about these psychotropic drugs that all of us know someone who has been afflicted with the negative impact of what these drugs can do. And she's been involved in this for decades. And again, Dr. Tracey, we were talking about how these drugs get approved. And during the break, GW was telling me, well, doctors practice medicine, and it's almost like that's the best. That is a good word to describe it, because it's almost like even though they have a lot of training, they are experimenting on us.
Well, yeah, the last time I was at a doctor, I actually asked them point blank, "Are you practicing that on me today, or is that actually something that you know?" And he didn't seem to get the joke.
Well, yeah, when you're 8 years of additional schooling after your pre-med, and you've got all this extra training and experience, and it's like, well, we have the best and greatest information there is. No one knows more than I do about this. That's kind of the attitude, but it really seems like it's more like the drug companies tell the doctors, this is what you do, and then over years of experience, they try to say, well, let's try this. I have a friend who was worried that she was going to die, and this is just this last week, because they were going to give her 8 times the recommended dose of an antipsychotic, and they were ramping down one of them, and they were ramping up the other one to try to switch her to something else, because she was saying, well, the drug I've been on is killing me. And,
And because they spelled this one different, it might work different, right?
Right.
Well, and to the point that we were, yeah. Well, and the point that we were making earlier as well. Follow the power, follow the money, and how many of our well-intentioned medical professionals these days are handsomely rewarded for either prescribing X amount or having X percentage of their practice engaged in whatever pharmaceutical company came by, dropped them off some pens, and dropped them off a nice check.
That's an interesting one. What have you seen in regards to incentives, Dr. Tracy, and how are these?
Well, there's incredible incentives. In fact, they have been slapped with huge fines over this. Pfizer even being found guilty of racketeering in their marketing of gabapentin. And they paid out, I can't remember, was it $2 billion? I've lost track. These huge fines, and then they're allowed to keep, being found guilty of racketeering, they should have been shut down on the spot. Any of us never would have gotten away with it, but they were allowed to put the guilt on some small company they had just purchased and let that company take the fall, and then they were allowed to continue their work. It's just amazing what they're allowed to get away with. It's like going to your neighbor and saying, I just got found guilty of murder. Would you take the rap for me?
Yeah, that's a great comparison, Dr. Tracy.
Well, it really seems like
insane.
It seems like with the FDA certifications, there's so many millions of dollars that go into certifying a drug. I've even heard a figure as high as $1 billion for one drug.
Oh, the drug companies fund the FDA, period.
And
most people have no idea.
Right.
And what I didn't mention is that when George Bush Sr. got into the presidency, one of the first things he did was change the FDA requirements so that you only needed to show studies that lasted 5 to 6 weeks to get a drug approved. They don't know when you're taking an antidepressant what might happen after the first 5 or 6 weeks. And I think they fudged the first 5 or 6 anyway because they kept their studies hidden for 20 years. Anything negative, they hid it for 20 years. That came out about a decade ago.
Well, and I understand that the people that are running the study can, just with a stroke of a pen, if they see results that are coming in that they think are not necessarily, in their own judgment, they can just strike that.
Call it something else, yeah.
And then say
they know how to water it down. The worst thing with these drugs is something called a REM sleep disorder. In fact, the first school shooter to ever speak out is a really good LDS kid from Eastern Washington. And he was shy. That was his only fault. Because he was shy, they gave him Paxil. And after about a year on Paxil, he just was complaining about so many things, they decided they better switch him to a different one, which seems to always be their answer, even though they all basically work the same. They're in the same family of drugs. So they start switching him over to Effexor, and when he reaches the maximum dose after about 3 weeks, he told his parents he didn't feel very good, so he was going to go back to bed and go to school later. And they were fine with that. The kid had never given him a problem at all in his life. Well, he got up, got a gun, forgot to wake up, went to school, and held his classmates at gunpoint for 45 minutes. He, to this day, 20 years later, still has no memory of it whatsoever. They had to tell him when he reached juvenile detention what he was doing there because he was just well, everybody's seen the picture of the kid who did the shooting in Colorado
Yes.
at the theater.
And he was passed out in his
He
car
was
when
like
they found
that,
him.
you know.
Catatonic.
Exactly. And had no idea what he'd done. And finally the jailer said, "Do you know why you're here?" And he said, "No." And they explained to him what he'd done.
Well, and what a better way to, again, maintain control over a society than physically keeping them asleep. And not only that, but then the nightmares.
And brainwave patterns show that.
Yeah, and one of the things that I really appreciated from your research, Dr. Tracy, was demonstrating how when those individuals are asleep and the violent dreams that they experience, which are then made manifest, which are then made manifest because of their lack of that REM sleep and their clinical situation with no serotonin in their body and all of their receptors blocked, and they wake up physically, but mentally they're still in that dream world. And what a dangerous situation that is for any of us to be in. I was also looking briefly at one of the suicide rates. To me, this resembles a lot of the same graphs that I see with vaccines, where
also, do you know that REM sleep disorder that has long been known to include both murder and suicide, where you're acting out the nightmares?
Yeah, and I guess where I was going with
that, they have found that 86% of those they're diagnosing with that deadly sleep disorder are on antidepressants. That should be headline news.
Wow.
That should be the very first warning anyone being handed one of these drugs is given.
It's like kiss goodbye to your sleep. Kiss goodbye to your sanity.
Yeah, and the first thing they saw with these drugs was the repression of the REM sleep. You can't repress the dream state without it breaking through periods of wakefulness and becoming a part. You're suddenly asleep while you're awake.
Well, and what a solution this is to effectively paralyze a nation. I'm reminded a little bit of some of the strategies that were employed throughout the wars, and it became known that rather than shooting to kill a foe, if you shot to wound that individual, you would effectively take not only that one person, but 3 to 5 of their friends would have to come and start caring for that individual. So by shooting one person, you've effectively disarmed or taken out of the fight 6 individuals. I think the same thing stems from this Prozac, because it is certainly not only the end user that is taking the Prozac, but it's their family, it's their friends, it's their colleagues, and anyone who's associated with that person now lives in that Prozac bubble and is quickly absorbed.
And that is why the drug company does not care if you live or die on their drug, because if you die, they can drug the whole family because they're depressed that they just lost someone.
Yeah, you just didn't take enough of it. That's what it was.
Oh, yeah. Well, the CEO of Eli Lilly said that when his wife hung herself on Prozac.
Wow. Now,
Did you know about that?
For some of our...
they hit it really quick, didn't they?
Now, what was...
But if you really look, you'll find it. In fact, you can find it on our database at ssristories.net.
And what was the individual's name that you were referencing earlier, Dr. Tracy?
Which one?
That woke up, the good LDS boy that woke up and took his gun to school?
His name is Corey Battisgard. In fact, if you go to YouTube and just punch in why I took a gun to school, you will find a movie clip from a movie we did with Michael Moore with Corey and his father explaining what happened to him. And the whole world needs to see that. I mean, this kid was working on his Eagle Scout, getting ready to go on his mission. You know, somebody like that does not do this.
Yeah,
never in any trouble whatsoever. And he's just shy. That scares me to death. I was voted the most bashful in my senior class. They would have loved to get me with drugs.
Well, and what do they do with little boys who are rambunctious in school? Well, they throw speed at them. It's methamphetamines.
Yep. Exactly. When I lecture to kids in school and they start asking me about Ritalin, I say, well, the chemical name for Ritalin is methylphenidate. So what is it? And they all holler meth. And I say, you're right. Now go home and tell your parents because they haven't figured that out yet.
They just, yeah.
I've had pharmacists go off on just rants about how doctors are talking these parents into putting their kids on speed and how they all end up drug addicts in the end. It's just sad.
When I was going to mention earlier, Dr. Tracy, the correlation between these psychotropic drugs and what's going on within the vaccine community, where it feels like more and more doctors are reporting that parents are not simply saying, yes, poke my child those 108 times. Thank you very much. Instead, we have parents who are challenging the medical professionals to say, well, I don't know if my newborn does have hepatitis. I think we may be okay there. And hopefully a lot of our listeners are also waking up to know and understand that it is okay, and it's actually within your rights to talk to your doctor about why in the world should my slightly active 8-year-old who's been asked to sit at a desk at state church for 8 hours is a little wound up and maybe running around a little bit.
Yeah, state church, a.k.a. school.
A.k.a. public school.
Just in case any...
What's ironic is they know that little boys cannot learn unless their big muscles are moving.
I believe that.
So you just kind of go, hello?
And GW, you've got a number of kids, right? What have you seen in that regard?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's one of those where, every day is different, admittedly. And in the event that a child needs to, get up and move, you need to let them get up and move because all the amount of rope in the world cannot keep them tied to the chair. And to Dr. Tracy's point, nor will it really facilitate learning. As kids are out, learning as they are jumping and playing, those are the memories that stick. And unfortunately, for all of us, that doesn't allow for the greatest number of individuals to receive that education. So what happens? We just tie everybody down into a small 20 by 20 room with 40 kids in it and call that learning. But anyways, we digress a little bit away from the topic.
And we've got to break soon. But Dr. Tracy, I don't know. I know we were going to have you for an hour. Do you want to stay on to take some calls afterward?
That's fine with me because we kind of talked over everybody. So
yeah, we've had,
and we didn't even get to the alternatives, which are all listed on our website too. So
and we do need.
So what we don't get to, everybody knows they can go to drugawareness.org and find everything.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tracy. So I know we're gonna. Oh, we're going to break. So let's come back with Dr. Tracy and take some calls after at the next hour.
This Defending Utah presentation brought to you in part by Anderson Accounting, andersonaccounting.com, Trust Plumbing, 801-808-5470, Higher Calling Firearms, highercallingfirearms.com, Pioneer Family Scholars, Black Lotus Web Dev, blacklotuswebdev.com, American Appliance at 801-254-2566, Shem Financial Services, 801-856-6151, and the law offices of Garrett T. Smith, 801-477-1570, and Kangen Water at championsneverquit.biz.
It's a fact. More photos of you are being taken than ever before. Are you ashamed of your smile? At last, a new technology that gives a brighter and healthier smile in under 2 hours. And it's fully warranted, so you'll never have to worry about your smile again. Call Dr. Jeremy Thompson at Thompson Dental, 801-254-0835, or visit gonewsmile.com, and we'll show you how you can restore your faded, yellowed, or worn teeth without surgery, crowns, or implants. and it's backed by a 30-day, 100% satisfaction money-back guarantee. This scientific breakthrough will painlessly transform your appearance in one visit. The smile you've been waiting for will never cost less or look brighter than it will today. Call 801-254-0835 or visit GoNewSmile.com. That's GONU Smile.com to revitalize your smile. New Smile. It looks good on you.
So
what a marvel! Well done.
Well
done.
So we're going to open up the phone lines and take people in now that we've figured this thing out. Our number is 801-254-1640 to ask Dr. Tracey questions about these drugs and perhaps share some stories and experiences you've had. I know everyone has run-ins with this. Again, 801-254-1640. And GW, you were just pulling up some instructions.
Yeah, so these are right from our trusted government. And in the event that your SSRI does not work well for you, number one recommendation would be to increase the dose amount of your SSRI.
Oh my God.
Number two would be to switch to a new SSRI. Or number three, maybe a different kind of antidepressant that is not an SSRI. Maybe, Wellbutrin as an example. The fourth option is, of course,
you could possibly get.
Well, and the fourth option, let's stay here for a moment, is to just add a antipsychotic medication to your SSRI. The fifth one, and this is only one to consider, so let's not take this really too seriously. I say that joking, obviously, is to consider a non-medicine treatment such as talk therapy, and here we are, exercise. Good exercise include those that get your heart rate up or strengthen or stretch your muscles, such as yoga. But our phone line is blowing up.
It's blowing up. Let's take a caller, and then we'll talk with you, Dr. Tracy. You can answer the question. It's lighting up.
One last thing before you take the caller.
Yeah.
That is really critical for people to know is that the doctor who worked for Eli Lilly, who got the approval for the drug, bribed it. And he came out and admitted that before he passed away this last year. He tried and tried to basically repent for what he had done because he felt so terrible. He said there are shadows of people who have lost their lives that haunt me because of what I've done.
Wow.
And he did his first show here in America with me in Provo on David Christopher's program at K-Star.
Well, let's
you can actually listen to him, and I asked him how much he paid, and he talks about that. So
let's pause there just for
listen.
Yeah, let's pause there just for a moment, Dr. Tracy, as we have had. I have not seen the phone line this busy in a long time. Keep
trying to call in, folks, if you have something to say, because we'll get to you.
All right, here we go. Let the fun begin.
Okay, let's see what we got here. Okay, caller, you're on K-Talk.
Yes, Tom in Bountiful.
Good to meet you, Tom. You're on with Dr. Tracy. What's your question?
Well, Anna and I worked together a bit. We lectured together in tandem. But of course, I got drawn into the problem when I was taking cases for families who'd lost their children to DCFS or CPS. And almost every child taken into state care is treated with these drugs to deal with their separation trauma and their depression. Hold on.
Right. Possibly the most drug use there is.
So, yeah. What do you have to say about that, Dr. Tracy? I mean, they take them into the system, and then they start giving them these drugs, leading to the downfall of this child and his family.
I'm dealing with one right now who happens to be a friend's daughter. And she contacted me within a week of them beginning her on Zoloft. She sent me a note on Facebook saying, "Oh my gosh, I'm thinking about killing people." I had to tell her because she was in state custody. There was nothing we could do about getting her off because she was court-ordered to be on it. And I said, you've got to just keep telling yourself that those thoughts are not real. They are coming from the medication. I mean, it's homicidal ideation, a listed side effects. Why is it okay that we have prescription drugs on the market that list suicide and homicide as side effects?
Yeah, it's just absolutely perplexing. Well, Tom, before we let you go and we grab another one of our callers, was there another comment that you had, sir?
Yeah, what's really fun is when you realize as they get these children into the system, if they can get them on the medications, they're now listed as special needs. That means more money being drafted out of Title IV funding, but even more important, money coming out of that child's Social Security number. And Carol Keaton Strayhorn and Nancy Schaefer, who I met and worked with in the past, Nancy committed, quote, suicide, so-called. But they revealed to me that the number one draft of funding coming out of Social Security is Child Protective Service cases. In other words, there's more money taken out of Social Security by children being pushed into state care than is taken out by retired folks and handicapped or special needs people.
Wow.
Well, I already knew that drug abusers and drug dealers use their Social Security money, and it's considered a disability to be addicted to drugs, and then they deal with it. I know that.
Now, Ann and I both been partnered in many lectures, but if you'll go to familyversusstate.org or .com, I think I got both of them, you can see a link to that book written by Carol Keaton Strayhorn called Forgotten Children. And she was really aghast when she was asked by the governor of Texas to investigate Child Protective Services and found out the corruption and the graft that occurs, including the drug industry benefiting by these children.
Well, and that's and that is nothing new to listeners of Defending Utah Radio, that we have been talking quite a lot, and our host, Ben McClintock, speaking quite a lot about Child Protective Services and how they can basically kidnap your child.
And they have offices in in Primary Children's Hospital, they have an office right in there.
That's the largest, that's the largest single office of Primary Children's Hospital other than their administrative offices. By the way, there's another technique that's used by the prison system. In fact, a case that I'm dealing with right now is published under meadowsfire.com, meadowsfire.com. You will see that while this man was incarcerated, incommunicado with legal defense, they put him on a psychotropic drug and then attempted to coerce him into signing confession. And Ann will tell you, when you're under these drugs, you have a much higher capacity for being suggestibility. I'm looking for the right word. In other words, being induced into doing things you would not normally do or without conscience. So they medicated this man. Within hours, they asked him to sign a confession.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. They do it all the time.
But thankfully, his true conscience prevailed, but the medications disables your ability to reason and your conscience.
So, Tom, and thank you so much for taking the time to call into us this morning. This is just fascinating. So it sounds like before that train starts down the tunnel known as treatment with these type of drugs for your children, how can we make sure, what advice could we give to parents to make sure that they avoid going into that tunnel, which once you get in there, from what I'm hearing, it sounds like it is almost impossible to get out of?
Go ahead.
Well, first of all, we're poisoning our children at the get-go with all the toxins that are in the food system. And that's the primary problem with the brain. If you put the wrong fuel into the stomach, the brain cannot function correctly. And we've been feeding our kids fast food garbage. We're feeding them dead food. We're feeding them food that's been tainted with the chemicals. And is it any wonder that our minds are messed up? So first of all, you got to feed a child right. You got to treat it right. And when they have episodes of acting out, as most people, if I'd have been if I'd been in the clutches of these people, I would have been drugged as a child too, because I was not hyperactive, but simply curious.
Yeah, and isn't it strange that those natural tendencies of a child, such as the word curious, is now being replaced with all sorts of reprehensible behavior, thereby justifying the use of and the treatment of these psychotropic drugs?
Now we've got about 5 minutes before another break. Tom, thanks for joining us. Let's take another caller.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Caller, you're on with Defending Utah.
Hey, Tom. Yes. Now, is Dr. Tracy still on?
She is, yes.
Okay. Well, my sister was given so much of this stuff that she's broken with reality. Some of the things you were talking about, some of these people doing things and then not knowing they did it. And we don't know how to help her. She's just gone off on her own now. And I don't even know how she's surviving, but I look at this and I look at all of the LDS people that you're talking about, and I wonder, the church got involved in this marijuana thing. Where are they on this thing? I don't see the word of wisdom coming in to this play at all, and it seems odd to me that it shouldn't and wouldn't.
Well, we're here. We want parents to know what's coming, because ultimately the responsibility for children, it rests on the shoulders of the parents. And so, Dr. Tracy, what would you say to this man's request about, what do we do? I mean, do we look to the church? I would think that the parents really need to be educated.
Well, if you go to drugawareness.org and pull up an article, do a search for spirituality and sorcery, and it will pull up an article that a minister friend of mine asked me to write for his several 100,000 followers, probably a decade ago. And it talks about how these drugs affect you spiritually. And that is something that anyone who is a Christian needs to read, because the highest users of these drugs are Christian women, and of the Christian women, the highest users of those are LDS women.
Well, I see that, and I just can't understand why the fervor over this marijuana issue and to let this go under the radar.
Right. And I was told initially that the reason that they had targeted Utah with these drugs is because it was the only state left that had, on a whole, good, strong family and moral values, and they wanted to break that in order to gain the control they wanted.
Well, we see that.
And I heard that, I thought,
look up on the internet, the Melbourne man, the missionary Laws was his last name. That story will kind of lay this open. Thanks.
Well, and caller,
calling.
caller again, an amazing resource for all of our listeners. Drugawareness.org has a really cool search feature in there right now. Kevin and I are in there poking around a little bit, and what a great resource for all of those whose questions may not be able to be answered as we're on today.
Well, and there's so many legal challenges. See, when let's say you're an ecclesiastical leader, and
right.
and you're being asked about what do we do for our child, and I mean, you can't, if you say don't listen to the doctor, you're opening yourself up for lawsuits, problems. Attacks from the authorities.
Yeah, and I think
doesn't matter that we now know 75% of the doctors are on these drugs themselves. But
and I think we're seeing, in answer to that caller's question as well, a big initiative within the church just this year, which is going more towards family study and family education, which is then church supported. And
one of the biggest problems that most people don't know about, and I watched, was NAMI. If you've heard of the National Alliance for the Mentally Ill, isn't that a nice-sounding name? that they came into the church at about the year 2000 and went through and educated as many bishops as possible.
That's fantastic.
About mental illness. And, of course, NAMI, I kept saying to everybody, is not a patient advocacy group.
Okay, no, this is terrible.
Clearly being funded by pharma.
Oh, no.
And they're just a marketing arm. And even Deseret News made fun of me for saying that. Well, Senator Grassley did a Senate probe in 2008 and found that 81% of their funding is coming directly from pharma, and the media in Utah are still recommending them.
Oh, no. Well, we're going to take a break. We'll come right back. If you can hang on with us a little bit. This is a very interesting topic for our listeners.
Okay,
right, hang on just a little bit longer, Dr. Tracy. Thank you. And
sure.
Folks, call in 254-1640, 801-254-1640. Thanks.
This Defending Utah presentation brought to you in part by Anderson Accounting, andersonaccounting.com, Trust Plumbing, 801-808-5470, Higher Calling Firearms, highercallingfirearms.com, Pioneer Family Scholars, Black Lotus Web Dev, blacklotuswebdev.com, American Appliance at 801-254-2566, Shem Financial Services, 801-856-6151, and the law offices of Garrett T. Smith, 801-477-1570, and Kangen Water at championsneverquit.biz.
It's a fact. More photos of you are being taken than ever before. Are you ashamed of your smile? At last, a new technology that gives a brighter and healthier smile in under 2 hours. And it's fully warranted, so you'll never have to worry about your smile again. Call Dr. Jeremy Thompson at Thompson Dental, 801-254-0835, or visit GoNewSmile.com, and we'll show you how you can restore your faded, yellowed, or worn teeth without surgery, crowns, or implants. And it's backed by a 30-day, 100% satisfaction money-back guarantee. This scientific breakthrough will painlessly transform your appearance in one visit. The smile you've been waiting for will never cost less or look brighter than it will today. Call 801-254-0835 or visit GoNewSmile.com. That's GONU smile.com to revitalize your smile. New smile. It looks good on you.
Can't get enough Defending Utah Radio? Then follow us on Facebook and subscribe to Defending Utah's YouTube channel. DefendingUtah.org. Think right and wrong, not right and left.
Okay, we are back with Dr. Tracy of the International Coalition for Drug Awareness.
I've got two different cases that I'm thinking of right now that I worked with there in Utah. One was a fellow who went cold turkey off of Prozac after 2 years on it, which is never a good idea because you can end up with antidepressant withdrawal mania, which is a form of psychosis. And for 5 months, he thought he was an ambassador to the Queen of England. I think the mayor of L.A. is still really mad at him for not coming through with all the money he told him he could get for him from the Queen.
Wow.
Okay, line 3, you're on with Defending Utah. And Dr. Tracy.
Dr. Tracy, I have 2 friends that have had little mini strokes, and they put them on drugs. Can you tell me what kind of drugs that they're on? The one person says, it seems like I have more strokes since I've been taking the drug.
Well, if it's an antidepressant, they would. Those are known side effects of these drugs.
So unfortunately, what the caller is describing is just going to be kind of par for the course, I guess. Is that correct, Dr. Tracy?
Well, yeah, they need to know that any drug that is, these drugs cause strokes, period. I mean, they're listed.
All drugs cause strokes?
Well, antidepressants do. Is that what you're saying that your friends are taking?
I don't know if they're antidepressant or not. I just know that the doctors put them on drugs, and so they take the drugs. Well, Gloy keeps saying he keeps having these little mini strokes when he takes the drugs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I think, caller, we would need to know just exactly what symptoms or what type of a drug. Today we are specifically speaking about antidepressants with Dr. Tracy and the ill effects thereof.
Google them.
Correct, yes.
I would Google it, put the name of the drug in with the word stroke, and see what you come up with. And if there have been reports on strokes with that drug, it should come up for you.
Okay, say it again, what I program in.
So you would want to go to drugawareness.org, and there is a search tool right there, and you could look there. Or Dr. Tracy is also saying you can just do a Google search looking up the specific drug, which would be also important to understand from your friend what it is that they're taking. Thank you so much, caller. We're going to jump off now and move over to line 4.
Yeah, let's get line 5.
Okay, thank you.
Line 5. Yeah, thank you, caller.
All right, caller, you're on with Dr. Tracy in Defending Utah.
Hi. Yes, I wanted to share my experience with psychiatric drugs.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, you're on the air.
Sorry, I was listening on my laptop.
Yeah, turn off your laptop.
Yeah, you'll need to turn that down.
Okay, it's off. I was put on psychiatric medication in 1998 while at BYU. My symptoms were recognized as being mental illness. But the interesting thing was, after being on medication, 5 classes of medication, growing progressively worse, I was eventually diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder, bipolar type with catatonia, and then worked...
sounds like they were working the way they are supposed to work.
Exactly. They made me progressively worse.
Oh, my.
And the doctors would just keep telling me that the medication unveiled my real diagnosis, and then, I went from being depressed to being bipolar to being schizoaffective. They just kept adding on more medication. Eventually, I got tired of that because they told me I was treatment resistant, and so rather than
sorry, I just hear it so often
treatment,
that I could almost
rather than stopping treatment, they decided to do ECT. And because ECT didn't work, they just continued to use ECT because they did not know what else to do. Never did they check for any other underlying conditions. And in 2015, I worked with an organization that helped me get off of all of my medications. And I've now been off of all of my medications for 4 years yesterday, Pioneer Day.
Wow, congratulations, caller.
Hey, we have a success story.
This is, thank you.
I'll bet you have no sign of any mental illness now, right?
Ma'am, go ahead and let Dr. Tracy talk. What were you saying?
I just said, and I'll bet you have no sign of any mental illness at this point, right?
Well, the underlying cause of my symptoms was actually correctly diagnosed in 2017, which was hepatic encephalopathy. So I had underlying fungal infection in my liver from the overprescription of antibiotics. And so once they put me on antifungals and radically altered my diet so that we were no longer feeding the liver problems, I no longer have any psychiatric symptoms at all.
Wow. Yeah. That's quite a story. Thanks for joining us on the radio. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you so much, caller.
Antibiotics, fluoroquinolone.
What's that, Dr. Tracy?
I asked if the antibiotics they gave her were fluoroquinolone.
Oh, I have been on multiple broad-spectrum antibiotics because I had chronic allergies, or really severe allergies, so I had chronic respiratory problems, pneumonia, bronchitis, chronic sinusitis, and so I have I was on antibiotics through childhood, probably 4 to 8 times a year for ear infections, sinus infections, bronchitis.
So all your
and
natural
the
immunity
natural yeast in my stomach outgrew my stomach and moved into the next organ, which was the liver, which caused all sorts of problems. And psychiatry recognized it as psychiatric, but if they would have tested my ammonia levels, they would have noticed that it was actually hepatic encephalopathy.
Wow. I know a lot of people have gut issues because of antibiotics and also because of our diets.
Yeah, I mean, health does start in the gut. We know that. And how sad it is that most doctors will either miss that or, as our caller has been mentioning, will actually blame the individual that they were resistant to the treatment. So let's triple or quadruple the treatment and begin with other very radical treatments rather than slowing down and taking a step backwards.
I think all too often people are in such distress, they want immediate answers, and so some doctors feel that they have to have an immediate treatment. And in fact, many doctors can't even receive payment if they don't attach a billing code to, a diagnosis and a billing code, because our medical field is set up as an insurance model more than actually like a sustainable healing model. And so we need to search out doctors who are interested in finding the underlying cause of these symptoms, because psychiatric medications force the brain to work in artificial ways, which deaden our ability to feel, in which case we feel that we no longer, might not feel the severity of the depression, but in the same breath you cannot feel the joy that comes with walking outside and feeling the sun on your face, or being with family, or just enjoying life around you. So it really flattens your ability to feel.
And callers, you are such a great success story here. What would you advise if you had a friend, or if we had another caller on with us that was saying, help, I'm in the pit of despair. How do I get out of this? What advice may you relay to that individual?
Personally, I would encourage them to recognize that there are so many underlying causes of these symptoms, and to look for a doctor who will just keep looking for answers, and learn as much as you can. I mean, my doctor used the research of the National Institute of Health researcher, Dr. Bruce Seaman, which is really, he wrote a book called An Extraordinary Power to Heal. And it's written in layman's terms, but the chapter endnotes are extensive so that you can understand what's going on, and then your doctor can read all the chapter endnotes to understand what you're talking about. Okay. Because so many doctors were not trained in gut health. They were not trained in looking at toxicity levels, looking, is there mold in the house that's causing these problems? Does the person have, difficulty metabolizing toxins in the foods, even like heavy metals? Have they had exposures to, pesticides and, growing up near farms? All of these other things that are environmental exposures. And of course, are we eating a bunch of processed food? Are we eating foods that feed yeast? Are we eating foods that feed the wrong bacteria? What are other things we can do? There's Dr. Pfeiffer from Princeton, the Brain and Biolab, he actually identified 27 different causes of schizophrenia-type symptoms. And the funny thing is, only one of those causes can be regulated using antipsychotics.
Yeah, my
friend the rest of the causes are all toxicity issues, and you have to identify, is it a phospholipid problem? Is it, mold toxicity? Is it candida? Is it heavy metal toxicity? So we really need to go back and get the best medical care, which does not necessarily mean mainstream medicine. We need to keep searching for answers, and we can find those answers as we turn inward and as we do as much research as we can, so that we can ask appropriate questions of our doctors. When they try to prescribe a medication, we say, are you forcing function, or what is the underlying cause? Why are you prescribing this medication? Because it's only then that we can educate and empower ourselves to ask appropriate questions and get the correct treatment.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. We appreciate you having you on. We need to get to some other callers. We just got a few minutes, so appreciate you.
Have a wonderful day.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
let me give a plug to another good book written by a doctor that I was going to have write the foreword for mine. It's called A Dose of Sanity by Dr. Sidney Walker, and he talks about all the physical issues you could have wrong with you for which they give you these drugs.
And throw that reference out one more time, Dr. Tracy.
A Dose of Sanity by Dr. Sidney Walker. Unfortunately, he died before I could ask him to write the foreword, so it's written by a psychiatrist, but
gotcha.
Dr. Peter Brady.
Well, what that last caller was mentioning, to me it sounded a lot like this story that I heard a long time ago, Kevin, and it was where, in the event that you have a rock in your shoe, there's a variety of different ways you can deal with that.
Right.
You go to the pharmacist, and they'll say, well, that's causing you pain. Why don't you take this drug so you just don't feel that pain anymore? And then, of course, you want a second opinion, so you go to the surgeon, and the surgeon says, unfortunately, Kevin, you were just built wrong. So if I cut this hole in your foot, the rock can fit right in there.
It's funny because I was just talking to a friend that had one of those ear piercings that's meant to stop migraines.
Okay. Yeah.
I can't help but think that that's just, poke the stick in your eye so that you don't think about the pain in your gut.
Well, and again, like that last caller was alluding to, and I think as we've been talking about this morning so well, there is a third option. You can take your shoe off and you can dump the rock out. But in order to do that, you have to understand what is the root cause of the problem.
Right.
And unfortunately, in today's world of I want it now and let's make sure that it's immediate.
The root cause is you don't have enough Prozac.
Well, that Prozac metering. I wasn't born with Prozac in my system.
Well, we've got about 20 more minutes. Are you okay hanging on for another 20 minutes, Dr. Tracy?
I'm okay. I know Utah needs more answers than just about anybody.
If we can figure out the phone lines, then we'll definitely do a better job. Well, we'll go to break, and we'll come back to you in a few minutes.
Yeah, please call in, though.
801-254-1640.
This Defending Utah presentation brought to you in part by Anderson Accounting, andersonaccounting.com, Trust Plumbing, 801-808-5470, Higher Calling Firearms, HigherCallingFirearms.com, Pioneer Family Scholars, Black Lotus Web Dev, BlackLotusWebDev.com, American Appliance at 801-254-2566, Shem Financial Services 801-856-6151, and the law offices of Garrett T. Smith, 801-477-1570, and Kangen Water at championsneverquit.biz.
It's a fact. More photos of you are being taken than ever before. Are you ashamed of your smile? At last, a new technology that gives a brighter and healthier smile in under 2 hours. And it's fully warranted, so you'll never have to worry about your smile again. Call Dr. Jeremy Thompson at Thompson Dental, 801-254-0835, or visit GoNewSmile.com, and we'll show you how you can restore your faded, yellowed, or worn teeth without surgery, crowns, or implants. And it's backed by a 30-day, 100% satisfaction money-back guarantee. This scientific breakthrough will painlessly transform your appearance in one visit. The smile you've been waiting for will never cost less or look brighter than it will today. Call 801-254-0835 or visit GoNewSmile.com. That's GONU smile.com to revitalize your smile. New smile. It looks good on you.
Okay, we are coming back from a break with Dr. Anna Blake Tracey regarding the ill effects of so many psychotropic drugs that we are drowning in our society. And we've got a number of callers. Dr. Tracey, shall we take another caller?
All right, but before we run out of time, can I give you two wonderful success stories that people will be blown away by?
Definitely. Before we end, let's do that for sure. Let's say probably last 5 minutes for sure we'll do that.
Yeah, let's jump to these callers who, again, thank you so much for your patience, callers. It is like Christmas in here.
All right.
Here we go. Line 5.
Line 5, you're on with Dr. Tracy.
Oh, yeah. I was wondering, I just tuned into the program. I missed a lot. But has anybody touched on the fact that we're breathing toxic air in the valley. We've had moderate air for over 3 weeks. Has anybody touched on that?
We haven't talked about that yet. Dr. Tracy, any comments on the cleanliness of your air and the... I can't think of anything.
There's got to be a lot of metals in the air that we breathe.
Thanks for your question.
I have.
Okay, we got that question. I had to cut you off there, caller. Sorry. What were you going to say, Dr. Tracy?
Oh, I was just going to say that he has a very good question, because when you breathe in a toxin, it is a direct hit to the brain. It can cause more brain damage than any other way of getting a toxin into your body, because you're bypassing the liver, and it just goes directly to the brain. That's why kids that use inhalants end up with more brain damage from those drugs than anything else. That's why I'm so frightened that they're putting out so many so-called medications now that you inhale.
Yeah. I used to use inhaled Alupent for my asthma, which, of course, you needed to have an inhalant so that you could not suffocate.
Right.
But, wow, that's good to know. I mean, of course, the cocaine snorted. I mean, you look at that.
You need to be really, really cautious with anything you're taking in, especially nasally. That's why I use essential oils all the time. But I'm very cautious about which ones I use, how they're processed, because you don't want ones that have been, where the oils have been pulled out chemically. Because then you've got all those chemicals in the oil that you're then inhaling into your brain. So, yes, people need to keep that in mind.
Great point.
So,
and again, thank you for all those callers.
The air can really affect you.
Yeah, thank you, callers, for being patient. Let's jump to another question here, Kevin.
All right, let's try line 5. Caller, you're on with Dr. Tracy.
Yes, am I on the air?
Yes, you're on the air.
Thank you. Okay, I appreciate it. I would like to just say that several people have called in, and they've wanted the government to solve this problem, or they wanted the church to solve this problem. And this problem is bigger than Tom's discovery of all the trailers poisoning people. This is a huge, huge problem. What you're describing here, I mean, all these psychotropic drugs being prescribed to America. I mean, this is a huge problem, and I think earlier Dr. Tracy mentioned, and I think also one of you mentioned, that the problem is education. To solve the problem, what you're doing right now is education, where all of us need to know what the big money, is doing to us, and we need to get control of our own lives, our own health, educate us, and then, to me, the biggest way to solve the problem is the caucus system. And I can't go into this deep at all.
It's another rabbit hole, isn't it? This is Ray, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thanks for calling, Ray. So for your question for Dr. Tracy would be about personal responsibility, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Dr. Tracy, go ahead.
Well, and that's why I've spent so many years doing everything that I can think of to try to educate people about these drugs, because I realize that is our only hope. And most people are being kept from the truth because, well, like the media, I did a show with Lisa Gibbons on mothers on these drugs killing their children. Do you know, as we stepped onto the stage to do that show, and I had a father with me who had just lost his whole family, they had the nerve to say to us, you can say the word antidepressant, but you cannot say the brand names of these drugs.
What?
Because of our advertisers. They didn't even hold back. They just laid it right out. So you need to know that when you see all those ads on TV constantly telling you to use this drug or that drug, they're the ones telling you what you can hear on TV and what you cannot hear.
Well, and again, that's one of the reasons why we love being part of K-Talk Media, don't we, Kevin? Because we have a chance to really put out information that you probably are not going to get anywhere else.
Yeah, we can essentially talk about what we want. And,
correct.
And then you can call in and you can ask what you want.
Well, and I also find it interesting,
I used to do
Tracy,
shows nonstop with one of the biggest radio stations in the country. And I was told over and over I was one of the top 2 guests that they had on their show that got more interest than anything else. And it's because everybody's affected by
people are dying from this problem every
yet,
day.
As soon as that station was bought out, I was never on again.
Well, and again, it's I'm always impressed when I have the opportunity to flip on a television or look at certain things, and all of the advertisements that you see that are for things that kill you. But the last time I checked, I never saw a commercial for a carrot. And I haven't seen, commercials for those things that are good for you. But again, as we digress,
follow the money.
We'll try to get to more of our callers.
One more caller, and then we'll have a story from Dr. Tracy at the end. Okay, line 5, you're on with Dr. Tracy. We got problems with that line. Sorry, caller. If you want to call back in, you had some noise on your line there. But Dr. Tracy, maybe we go ahead and you were going to tell some stories at the end here. Why don't you go ahead and jump into that?
Okay. I had a 14-year-old girl there in the valley that was coming off of Paxil. She'd been on for a year and a half.
That's here in Utah?
Yes.
Okay.
And she was doing really well, weaning down off very, very slowly like you have to do to get off of these. I mean, it takes months to years to get off properly, depending on how long you've been on them. And she was doing just fine, but she began to develop the cough that can often come in the withdrawal. Because when your main function of serotonin is constriction of muscle tissue. So we know that it constricts the bronchial tubes, so they can often develop a cough. And her mom, not understanding that it was part of the withdrawal, started giving her cough and cold meds. You cannot take cough and cold meds with an antidepressant. It can kill you.
So these are, in terms of cough and cold meds, I know that we got Sudafed out there. We've got, you've got like
anything with
Lofesin.
dextromethorphan in it.
Okay, so that would be the active ingredient. Cool.
Right.
Huh.
So anyway, she developed that, and the mother started giving her the cough and cold meds. Well, on the second day of that, she got a call from the school saying Crystal had just totally destroyed the schoolroom, just gone into some crazy thing and tore everything apart. And so the mother rushed to the school, and she called me when she got there and said, oh, my gosh, this is what's just happened to Crystal. She's completely out of it. We talked to her about one thing, and she answers us about something totally different. And she said, can I bring her to you? And I said, the emergency room's closer.
Yeah.
And she said, we've been there so many times in the year and a half she's been on this drug, and they've done nothing for her. And I said, well, I'm only 2 blocks away, so come on over if you want, and I'll go with you to the emergency room so I can tell them what tests to do so that they can see what's happening to her. And she said, okay, and hung up. And as soon as I hung up, I went, why didn't I tell him to give her some juice to bring her blood sugar up? Because I'm sure she's in insulin shock from the effects. Wow. And so, because the blood sugar is strongly affected with these drugs. And I called back, and I said, have they left yet? And the lady on the other line said, yeah, they've already gone. They just walked out the door. And I explained I'd wanted her to get some juice and why. And the lady said, that's it exactly. And I said, what? And she said, I'm the school administrator, and we have 2 other children here in the school that are diabetic, and Crystal acted exactly like they do when they go into insulin shock.
Wow. I've seen that before. That is people definitely behave erratically.
Oh, definitely. Because the brain cannot function without normal blood sugar levels.
Right.
Well,
and that's what leads so many people into these drugs to begin with. But they showed up at my door in just a few minutes. I took one look at Crystal and said, wait a minute, we're not going anywhere. Because she had the blank stare in her eyes, which I knew meant the brain was in seizure activity. She was losing brain cells. You cannot have the blood sugar drop like that and not suffer brain damage. And I said, bring her in, let's give her some juice, and then we'll go over to the emergency room. And so I told her to sit down on the couch and take her shoes off, because her mom and I were going to rub some lavender oil on her feet to help calm her down from what she just went through. And I went to the fridge really quickly to grab some juice. Luckily, noni juice was sitting there, which is one of the best things you can get to balance the blood sugar. So I poured half a glass of noni juice, and I said, you sit here and sip on this. It's kind of nasty, but sip on it while we rub this lavender oil on your feet. And so we did that, and she drank the juice. We put her shoes back on. She remembers nothing that happened at school that day. She doesn't remember coming to my home, but she remembers clearly everything that happened 10 minutes later as she left my home.
Incredible. Well, Dr. Tracey, we're running out of time, but just last final words as far as what parents can do to be savvy and to take better care of their families.
Well, they've got to learn what causes this, and like I said, blood sugar is probably the very biggest cause. In fact, research shows that. But you'll rarely hear that from a doctor.
Well, and it also sounds like one of the another good piece of advice for all of those parents out there listening is to please be curious. And as it relates to what your child is doing, it may not be appropriate to take that very first answer and to slow down and be calm before we start
throwing drugs at the problem.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you. As we go down a path that it may take us, 3 days to make the decision and then years to undo. But again, thank you so much for your time today, Dr.
Tracey. We really appreciate having you, and we've got to go. But again, this is drugawareness.org. Dr. Anna Blake Tracey, please look her up. Please help support this movement that she is working on. Thank you very much.
Thank you.